Okay, we're on 109, 109A, top of the page, fourth line down. Amar, we just said before in the Brisa. Um, so we were talking about you have a you have a piece of meat that became that was mixed with milk, and you it got a flavor of milk. Um, Even if you squeeze out the milk from it, it's still we have machlokas about whether it's still active. So we said Divrei Chachamim kishenir bechisa. When the Chachamim said that the whole pot is permitted, even the slice on which the milk mixed into it. Um, that it's when is it mutar according to the Chachamim? We're going to assume it's when he stirred the pot or covered the pot. In which case, like everything becomes mixed together, and so then it's becomes bata. So mind your Mikey. So what do we mean by stirring or covering the pot? When ilema near basofalo near betchila, if we're talking about like the first, the milk falls into the pot, you let it absorb the flavor, and then you stir it. Then the kisa basof lo kisa bechila, or covered at the end. In other words, the it all became mixed up later after it acquires the milk flavor. Amras niven Yehuda. We said that it seems like Rabbi Yehuda is correct. Um, so, like, if Rabbi holds that once the flavor is absorbed, it becomes usher forever, even if you squeeze it out. So then, um, so um, but that's not what Rabbi says. So what does it mean then that he stirred it or covered it? Everything got mixed together right away at the beginning. If that's what it means, Michal Rabbanon Savres, the rabbis would hold near Basof lo near Betchila, Kisa Basof lo Kisa Betchila. They would be talking about the same case. Mutar, so everything's mutar, even the slice that absorbed the milk. Alma Kasavre Efshar Basochta Mutar. So apparently they say it's mutter. They don't say that you have to squeeze it out first. They say it's mutter altogether, but that's not what the rabbis say. Because Amar Ravachim Ravina. I mean, so does that make sense? So Amar Ravachim Ravina. We might be after yourself completely. How do you know you're talking about a case where you could squeeze the milk out of the individual piece of meat? Maybe that's not what they're talking about. Dilma Efshar L'Sof Lo Direka Aser. Maybe everybody says if you could squeeze it out, then you have to squeeze out. Then that's like even when you could squeeze it out, that piece becomes remains usher. V'hacha, what are they arguing about? Bermin b'mina kamifugay. They're arguing about whether what the rule is for min b'mina, right? So min b'mina means if two things that are similar or the same get mixed together. Maybe that's what they're arguing about, whether there's beetle there or not. Beetle barov. Diam Rabbi Yehuda Tamei. So Rabbi Yehuda holds Diam min b'mina labatil, that you can never cancel if it's min b'mino. It can never become canceled. Can become batal barov. The rabbis would say, yeah, min b'mino is batal. So really, that's what they're arguing about. It's not about um, when did they get mixed together, but granted that they're mixed together, but is this the kind of mixing that can become batal or not? That's the machlokas. Morris says no. Hi, my. What kind of idea is that? Okay, so it's fine to say that the Rabbanan here hold like Rabbi Yehuda. That min b'mino is not batal. And they're disagreeing whether in the case whether it's possible to squeeze it out. Hainu to come a Rebbe, that's why Rebbe says near Rebbe so it makes sense for Rebbe to say, it looks like Rabbi Yehuda is correct here, Rabbanan correct there. But if you want to say that the machlokas is not about when you can squeeze out the milk, everybody agrees that if you could squeeze out the milk, then that piece is always usher. B'hacha min b'mino can be flagay, and here they're talking about min b'mino. So, how could Rabbi say that he agrees with the Rabbanan? Um, that if you stirred the pot, we just saw if you stirred the pot, if you mix it all together, then then the Chachamim would say, um, "Hi near to Rabbi Yehuda, ve'ein nirin mevayle." Then the words of the Chachamim would not make any sense that way, because that if if okay, if the Chachamim don't make a difference between stirring, okay, then then they might be agreeing with Rabbi Yehuda that if you stirred the pot, maybe you didn't stir it right, and so you treat it like if this pot hadn't been stirred at all. So then that first slice remains usher. But Rabbi would say that that the whole mixture, all of the pieces of the whole stew would become usher when you didn't stir the pot. But if you did stir it at the beginning, then you don't have a problem. Um, because the that first slice never became usher, and so it's not mean b'mina. Um, so the Gemara says v'tu lamide. So there's nothing else to to discuss here. In other words, now it makes no sense to say it's a min b'mino thing. Really, our original understanding of the machlokas is that it's whether you can permit that one piece that absorbs the milk or not. And that's what we ended up with the machlokas. Okay. Now we move on to a different issue, and there's two parts of the animal which have particular concerns, and those are the udder because the udder is full of milk, and the heart because the heart is full of blood. And so the udder is a problem of basar b'chalav, and the heart is a problem of dam, of eating blood. So how do we treat these organs? We'll see what the Mishnah says. Hakal, the udder, karo umotzias halava. What you do is before you cook it, before you can eat it, you tear it open and you squeeze out or you extract all the milk. Um, but low grow. But if you didn't do that, over love, it's fine. It's that it's not an Easter. It's the smart thing to do or the right thing to do, but there's no malchus for it because you didn't. First of all, you didn't cook it together, and you did the shechita properly. Um, and it's not really considered milk. It's milk if you milk it from a live animal, but once the animal is slaughtered properly, everything within it is kosher. I mean, except for Nasha, let's say, but and the specific parts that are forbidden, but milk is not a forbidden substance. And so if you once you've slaughtered the animal, the milk becomes part of the animal and is permitted to eat with the meat. Um, Now, halev, what about the blood? Karumoto is dama. The same thing. You have to remove the blood from it. Low karo, but if you didn't tear it open and remove blood, ain't no overlap. Same thing. There's no iser involved. Amar Zerav, ain't no overlap mutar. What does it mean that you don't transgress, you're not violating anything? It's actually permitted. There's no problem with it at all. Vanansan, the Gemara says, but we have another Mishnah. Ain't no overlap me'avad hu d'lo abad. Me'avar hu d'lo avar. When the language of Eno overlap, you don't transgress, doesn't say mutar. It says you don't transgress. That usually means that it's forbidden, but you don't transgress in the sense of you don't get the punishment of malchus. So Gemara says, "B'dinhu d'isura nami lecha." So Gemara says, okay, so really the truth is the Mishnah should have said that it's mutar. The idea the boil misna seifa halev karu motzi is dama lo kro over love. But since it's using the language in the second case, the case of the blood, it's using the language eno over, which in fact we're going to see, or the Gemara is claiming at this point that as we assume that language means you're not allowed to do it, but you don't get malchus for it. Hasame of our Haisura Ika, that it is still usher. So Tanarish over love. So it uses the same language in the beginning. We're talking about the other, even though the rule isn't the same. It's a little strange, but we see that this is a fairly common device used in the Mishnah and the Gemara. Lame Messiah, maybe we can support that. Here's another brisa. Hakol, the other, karo motzias chalava. You tear it open and you remove the milk. Lo kro, if you didn't, ain't over love. You're not over. You don't violate the yeah. Well, we'll see what it means. Ain't over love. Halev karo motzias damo. They have to tear open the heart also and remove the blood. Lo kro, if you didn't, karo laachar bishulo umutar. You can even remove the blood after cooking. So here we have two separate statements about the udder and the heart. So levu the kriya. So here, okay, so it's still required to tear open the heart, but it doesn't say that about the udder. Kachal lo kriya. So it's not required. So it sounds like it's really mutter. So Dilma Levu Sagi Levu Kriya. So maybe there is a difference between the heart and the other. Maybe the heart, it's enough just to tear it open and remove the blood, but Sagi Levu Kriya, but it wouldn't be enough for the chal, and that's why we say, rather than you should go ahead and do it anyway. Vigala, right? Or some explain exactly the opposite. Amar Zera Rav Eno over love the us. Rav Zera's statement was, you're not you don't violate the Easter, but still it's usher with the chal with the other. Lema Messiah, maybe our mission supports that. Eno over love me ever lo over of Yisura Ika, which that sounds like the correct language. The Gemara says no. Bedinu Yisura Nami Leka. Really, the Mishnah should have said that there's no Easter for the udder. The idea the Bible Mishnah Sefer Halev Karamotzi Estomah Overlove, since it wants to use the same language as for the heart, so that's why the Hasa Me'avar who is Lo Avar Ha'isura Ika. In the case of the heart, then there really is an Isur, even if you don't do it. If you don't tear it open, then it's actually an Isur. Tanai no overlove. So he uses the same language for the beginning of the Mishnah. The other, so Tashma, but let's prove from that other Mishnah that we just quoted. Hachal, the other Karo Moses Halava. You have to tear it open and remove the milk, low karo, but if you didn't, ain't no overlap. There's no iser. There's no problem. Halev, but the heart karo motzias damo, low karo achar bishul mutar. But the heart is you have to tear it open even after it's cooked. You can still tear it open, and then it's still mutar. Levu by kriya. The heart is what needs to be torn open and remove the blood after cooking. I will call by kriya, but the other doesn't require it. So it seems like the other is permitted. And the answer is still levu the cycle kriya. I will call kriya. Well, maybe it's not that it's implying that the other is permitted. It's the opposite. It's like the heart you can fix by tearing it open even after cooking and removing the blood, but the udder you can never fix. Even tearing it open after cooking is insufficient to make it mutar. It's still usr. Okay, so which one is it? Tanya Kalishna Kama Rav, and we have a brisa that sounds like the first version. Chol shabishal b'chalava mutar. An udder that you cooked the udder without removing the milk, it's permitted. Uh, Keva shabishla b'chalava asur, but the keva, which is one of the stomachs, and you cooked it with um, milk in it. In other words, when you did the shechita, there was milk. Apparently, we're talking about a nursing calf. Okay, so it was drinking milk, and there's still milk in the stomach when you did the shechita. Also, that milk is not considered part of the animal's body. That's milk that makes it basar b'chalav. Umaha fresh means what's the difference? Zekon may have one is the milk is just it's not absorbed, but it's collected in the stomach. But the other, it's more like part of the animal still, it's not really considered milk because the animal hasn't been milked. It's produced milk within its body. It's still considered meat. Case on Carl. Now we got to the question of what's the mechanics of this? How do you tear the udder? Amar Yehuda, Karo Shesiva Erev, lengthwise and crosswise. The Toho Bakosel, and then you squish it against the wall. Okay, so you make an X, cut, and then you squeeze it out, and then all the milk comes out. That's what it means to squeeze out the milk. Amalei Elazar said to his shamash, to his servant, Krali vana echel. Here, take this udder and tear it for me and cook it, and then I'll eat it. Micah Mashman, so like, what's the Kiddush here? Masnisin, it's a Mishnah that says, so what do you think that he just survived? He ruled like the Mishnah? That's nothing. Why are we reporting that? Mashman, what it's telling us is, Delo Be'inon Siva Erev Tacho Bakosel. He's saying it's enough to just remove the milk some other way. You don't have to be so thorough like we just said. You don't have to do the crossways cut and squeezing it everything out. You just I don't know, scoop it out or squeeze it out. You don't have to be so thorough. Just a simple, yeah, any kind of tear through which the milk can escape is sufficient. Amalei Yalta Rav Nachman. Yalta said to Rav Nachman, they were married. Michte, let's see. Called the Asralon Rachmana Sharlan Kavase. There's a principle that everything that's Asr has something similar to it that's mutter. Asralon Dama Sharlan Kavda. Blood you can't eat, but liver, which has a lot of blood in it, and that's why we have a special koshering procedure for it, we're allowed to eat. So there's something, that we can satisfy ourselves with that's like blood. Nida dam tahar. Nida, a woman who's having her period, is forbidden to have sex with, but dam tahar. But there's other kinds of blood, other kinds of discharges that a woman can have that do not make her a nida. Chelev behema, chelev chaya. We're not only not allowed to eat chelev from an animal, from a domesticated animal, but we're allowed to eat from a chaya, from a wild animal. Chazir, mocha de shibuta. You can't eat pork, but you can eat the brains of a shibuta, which is a kind of fish which apparently is considered similar in taste to pork. Gerusa. You can't eat gerusa, which is a kind of bird, non-kosher bird. Lishna de kavra. But what you can eat is something that tastes similar, which is the tongue of a fish, a certain kind of fish. Ashes ish, grusha b'chayabala. You can't sleep with someone else's wife, but that same person can become mutter if she's divorced. Eshes ach yavama. What about your brother's wife? You can't sleep with her, but once he dies, if it's a case of yibum, then you can. In fact, it's a mitzvah. Kusis. You're not allowed to sleep with a woman, a kuti woman, by a fasar, but there are circumstances under which you can if she's captured in the war. Be'inon lamecha bisra b'chalva. So she says, so what is there that's like meat cooked in milk that I can eat? Amar Lahu Rav Nachman l'tavche. So Rav Nachman said to the chef, "Zavikula kachle, roast an udder for her. So an udder will have milk, the taste of milk in it, and yet it's permitted because it's milk from the other udder and not milk that was milked from a live cow." But the Gemara says, wait a minute, what about our Mishnah? Koro, you have to tear it and remove the milk. So, like he's saying, like he didn't give them instructions to squeeze out the milk or to remove the milk from the other. He says, just take another and roast it for her, and she can eat it. So, hahu l'kdera. Rav Nachman would answer that when does the Mishnah say you have to remove the milk is when you're going to cook it in a pot. But if you're roasting it, you're not required to do this procedure of tearing it at all, because presumably in the roasting process, the milk will be removed or will come out. Well, Katane, but Morris says, wait a minute. Shabishlo. Um, our original statement was um, in the Mishnah, in the Brisa, that it was cooked, and cooking means in a pot. Um, Diavad in. Um, L'chatchila lo. Oh, no, so it was cooked, and it says it's already been cooked. So it doesn't say you're allowed to go ahead and cook it. It says if it was cooked already, then go fine. But the you can eat it. So how could Rav Nachman say fine? Go ahead and roast another for her. Who adin afilu l'chatchila. So Gemara says no. The Mishnah's language, the Bryce's language is imprecise. Even if you initially set out to cook it with the without tearing it open, it's fine. I did the kabbalah mishnah seifa, but since we're gonna later say, or the next phrase is gonna say keva, it's gonna talk about milk that came out of the stomach of an animal that was slaughtered, shabishla b'chalav asura, that is forbidden. Dafilu diavad that is even b'diavad, you can't cook it. So we use the same language. Sometimes reisha shabishla, but really the reisha is even if you set out to cook it that way, it's fine. But it just uses the language to parallel the language that's required in the next piece. Um,
Is it making a
and
distinction between roasting and cooking, though? Wasn't that part of the question? And here it seems
Well, that was
be-
one answer, right? That was the first thing we said, that roasting is different than cooking, or uh, um, um, yeah, number one, roasting is different than cooking. Um, so yeah, so okay, so I was mistaken. So bishul does not here mean doesn't. We're assuming he didn't mean to cook it in a pot. He meant roasting it. Um, and sorry, the brisa, when it said cooking it, meant roasting it. Um, and we're ending up saying that you could even do l'chachila, despite the language of the Mishnah, which puts it in the past tense, of the brisa, which puts it in the past tense. That's only to be parallel in its use of the language. And you have to remember, in all of these discussions, that remember that this is an oral transmission, right? So there are all kinds of devices that one can use to try and assist as memory aids, right? So it seems likely to me that the reason that you would do this and be imprecise is to assist the memorizer with using parallel language.
so that
Uh,
we would conclude here that roasting the l'chachila would be permitted, but the bishul would not be permitted. Cooking would
no,
not
no,
be permitted. L'chachila.
that's no. I'm backing off of that. It's not. I don't think that's the case. I think the bishlo here is, we're assuming, refers also to roasting. That we're not distinguishing uh, between cooking and roasting. The Bryce is referring to roasting.
The Bryce is refer to
Yeah,
roasting, but
and
the
Rav Nachman
Mishnah,
was also, yeah. Rav Nachman said specifically go and roast it.
but in the Mishnah wasn't that referring to cooking, like boiling or for instance?
So it seems from the discussion of the Gemara that's not the case. It's any kind of preparation, any kind of cooking.
So it wouldn't matter whether it's boiling or
I think that's
roasting
correct. Yeah,
or
that's what it
what else?
seems to get from this discussion.
So the
This could go
chatchila,
on.
one could cook them then.
I'm sorry?
One could cook this other the hatchila,
Yes,
could cook it in milk.
correct. Well, in its own milk. Yeah.
Oh, we would have to open it
Well,
up
no,
then.
no, 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 no. Well, uh, what we're talking about is not whether you can do nothing. What we're talking about is whether you can do any kind of perfunctory removal of the milk from the udder versus whether you have to do a complete job by doing a crosswise cut and squeezing it out against the wall. That's the distinction. So Rav Nachman is saying, that's not that level of removing the milk from the other is not required. You just have to do a perfunctory, simple tear and let the milk drain out. But you don't have to be so assiduous in removing the milk as the other view holds.
So what does it mean that it would be cooked in its milk then? I mean,
Meaning
what do
that,
we
there's milk within the udder, right? But we're not considering that as milk that's forbidden to cook with meat because it's part of the animal when it was slaughtered. And so I guess your question really could be like, so why do you have to bother? That's a good question. Um, like if we're saying that really this milk is part of the meat of the animal, why do you have to remove why do you have to remove the milk at all? And that would
just put the
explain.
udder in there? Just put the udder in the oven or put it in the
Yeah,
pot.
exactly. Exactly. And that's why we would say, okay, why exactly? It could be drabanan, could be um, I'm not sure what the level of or it could just be that it's forbidden, but you don't get malchus for it. Um, yeah, it's a little unclear to me what is the nature of the problem with the milk in the udder, if we're going to permit it anyway at the end, after removing some of it.
Well, the next question I have is, could one cook this udder with other meat? You
With
have a
other
roast
meat.
beef and with
Yeah, I
roast beef,
guess
and you
so.
throw you
I
put the
guess
udder
so.
in with the roast beef at the same
Yeah, because
time.
if you're going to consider it as a meat product because it was part of the animal when it was slaughtered, then sure, why not cook it with other meat? It's not part of only this meat. It's meat. If it's meat, it's meat. Right? Okay, let's go on a little bit more. Um, he saw like Rebbe Lazar when Rebbe Lazar came from when he left Bavel to Eretz Yisrael. Ashkechel Zirei found Zirei Amalei said, "Ikotana da asnye larav kachal." Um, um, do you know, like, can I find the person who taught like Rav? That Rav said that you must tear the udder, otherwise you can't eat it. Otherwise, it's usher. Who is that? Achvei Rabbi Yitzchak bar Abdimei. So they found Rabbi Yitzchak. Amalei ani lo shanisi lo kachal kol ikar. Um, Rabbi Yitzchak said, I didn't teach Rav anything like that. Rav bika matzah. Rav found he found an open valley. Bagadar bagadar. So Rav saw that this is kind of a wide open thing that you can eat. You can lechatchila, you can eat the milk from an udder. He didn't feel like that was appropriate, or he just saw go to gutter. He built a fence, right? He didn't want people to think that it's not so bad to have milk with meat because look, here's a case where you can have it. So therefore, he said, don't it's you won't get lashes, but we're still going to make it forbidden. To Rav Ikla Tatlafush, because Rav once happened to come to this place called Tatlafush. Shamelahu Itza de Kamar Lachabertan. He overheard a woman saying to her neighbor, Riv de Bisra Kama Chalva Bailu Shulai. How much milk do you need in the recipe to cook a liter of measure of meat, right? So Amar, he said, Logamire de Basar Bachal Basar. What is this recipe? Well, she's asking about that you can cook. How much milk do you need to cook the meat? It's crazy. Um, so Iake Vakasul Kachle. So he wanted to go a little further. He wanted to emphasize that milk and meat is forbidden. So he even said, and you know what? You think you want to use milk from the same cow from its udder? Don't use that either. Like just get in your heads that Basar Bachalav is Asr. Rav Kana Masne Hache. Rav Kana had a different version of the story. Rav Yossi Bar Abba Masne. Um, uh, oh no, so Rav Kana taught the story this way, but Rav Yossi Bar Abba Masne, Rav Yossi had a different version of the story. Ano Kechol Shel Menika Shenisila. I taught him. I taught Rava Brisa that says that an udder that you didn't cut and remove the milk is usher. But I taught him that's only the udder of a nursing animal, which has a lot of milk in it. Umi pilpulo sherabi chia shanalei k'chol stam. But um, but when Rav Chia taught Rav, he taught Rav that he just said kachal. He wasn't referring to a kachal specifically of a nursing mother. So a cow that's not nursing, that's what is permitted what the mission permitted um, to eat. Um, but it doesn't have milk in it or much milk in it or whatever. But when Rav Chia taught it, he was not specific, and that's where Rav got the idea that an udder that's loaded with milk from a nursing mother, that would be asr. Okay, let's stop here and pick it up here tomorrow.
That's what he taught Rav, but maybe Rav Chia taught him stam.
Yeah,
He didn't.
Rav Chia maybe wasn't he
And
wasn't
Rob,
specific
maybe
in his
Rob
teaching.
took it a step, and Rob took it a step further. He assumed that
Exactly, exactly. Yeah,
that it applied to everything, and not just the nursing mother.
exactly. Okay, we'll pick it up here tomorrow. Have a good day.